Hello and welcome to this special segment of The Hour. In this discussion, we turn to the latest developments in Iran, how the 12-day war has reshaped diplomacy, and what may lie ahead. The desert skies still carry the echoes of June's airstrikes, while beneath the surface, newly carved tunnels hum with quiet intent. Our focus takes us inside Tehran's contested corridors of power, where the fragile accord with the International Atomic Energy Agency now hangs by a thread. Routine inspections have been cut off, with Iran demanding guarantees against future hostile acts, even as the United States and Israel circle with renewed threats. Washington calls for irreversible steps. Israel decries ambiguity as aggression, with UN sanctions revived and Russian reactor deal is advancing. Tehran seeks space, yet the IAEA struggles to preserve oversight. So can diplomacy contain a program increasingly shrouded in shadows?
We're trying to make a deal so that there's no destruction and death.
Following the sweeping UN snapback sanctions imposed on Iran days earlier, the Council of the European Union announced on Monday that it was reimposing a broad range of sanctions on Tehran, citing its failure to comply with nuclear commitments under the 2015 Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. The renewed sanctions include travel bans, asset freeze and restrictions on trade, finance and transport. The move deals another blow to the already fragile nuclear deal, which has been already strained since the US withdrawal in 2018. While the sanctions could deepen Iran's economic crisis, they may also reduce Tehran's incentives to engage diplomatically. For Europe, the decision signals a shift towards tougher measures, even as it maintains that the door to dialogue remains open. From June's 12-day war to talks in Cairo, Israel, Iran and the United States remain locked in shadow battles where diplomacy and escalation clash.
From June 13th to 2025, Israel and Iran fought a 12-day war, their most direct confrontation in decades. It began with Israeli strikes on Iranian military and nuclear-related infrastructure intended to slow Tehran's program. Iran retaliated with waves of ballistic missiles and drones against targets in Israel, pushing the rivalry out of the shadows and into open conflict. The United States entered with limited, targeted strikes designed to deter further escalation and degrade specific capabilities. Iran answered by firing missiles toward U.S. facilities in the region, testing regional air defenses and crisis hotlines. While the full extent of the damage to Iran's nuclear effort remains uncertain, multiple assessments suggest a delay measured in months, not years, enough to alter timelines, not strategy. Both sides claimed success. Neither changed the fundamentals. Israel demonstrated reach and intelligence precision, but risks normalizing direct exchanges with Tehran. Iran showed volume and resilience in missile and UAV salvos, while signaling willingness to widen target sets. The U.S. sought to re-establish deterrence without sliding into a prolonged campaign. Diplomacy reopened under pressure. Technical contacts between Iran and the IAEA produced a framework to resume and sequence inspections, though questions over access and monitoring remain. In parallel, the European E3 moved toward restoring UN sanctions, snapback, under the nuclear deals mechanisms, steps that could harden positions if implemented. Tehran, for its part, has linked renewed talks to new terms shaped by the fighting. Three paths now sit in view. First, manage deterrence. Intermittent strikes under a fragile pause while diplomacy grinds forward. Second, renewed escalation if inspections stall or covert activity resumes. Third, a narrow diplomatic window pairing phased verification with de-escalation steps to avert another round of attacks. The 12-day war delivered tactical shocks, but no strategic resolution. Capabilities were damaged. Red lines were tested. What comes next will turn on endurance, verification, and whether leaders can convert battlefield leverage into a workable diplomatic framework.
And for more on this, joining us from Tehran is Ibrahim Shir, Iranian affairs expert. A very warm welcome, sir. And it's a pleasure to have you with us today on a very special day. Dear sir, how did the 12-day war last June make nuclear diplomacy even harder, sir?
First of all, good evening, everyone. The latest war made the whole region living on edge or on the brink, basically, and in a more clear way. If we have a smooth diplomacy or even a harsh one in this region after the latest war on Iran, the USA and Israel now refuse all resolutions with Iran, and even the Iranian spokesman said that Iran wanted to meet the USA envoy formally, but he refused. And so things have escalated because of Israel and because of USA's green light, and now the region is it's on fire basically and can go into war at any time.
Sir, in light of the recent EU sanctions that followed the UN sanctions snapback, could Europe's gamble on reimposing pressure backfire?
I think that reimposing sanctions on Tehran, either the USA sanctions or the European ones, is a try to push Tehran to the brink of no diplomatic return. If we look at it, the sanctions aren't new, but they pressured Iran further. They wanted to make Iran look basically bad, and so this is why they have the sanctions. And they also closed the diplomacy door basically between Iran and the European Union, and this actually isn't in Europe's favor, because in any future negotiations they will be excluded from the negotiations. And
Sir, how credible is Iran's demand for guarantees against hostile acts, and would the United States ever accept such terms, even tacitly?
Iran wants to, in any negotiations, if there are any, it wants some things, non-reimposition of the sanctions, and then have actual negotiations, not just to mess with them, because I think that the negotiations aren't really fruitful. We haven't seen real negotiations in the latest period, because there is the USA and Israel insist on trying to mess with Iran, and Iran is resilient and they don't compromise easily. They will actually be more strong and more resilient than before, and this is even to you their statements. And so we have to wait more until the negotiations are more mature and are more clear.
As the United States and the EU and their allies pursue a two-track strategy combining hardened deterrence with conditional diplomacy, will this approach succeed in pressuring Iran in concessions, or will it only push Tehran towards greater defiance, which is possible? What's your narrative, sir?
I think that this proposal could have been in Obama's era, or Biden, Joseph, even. Biden, we can say Trump doesn't want diplomacy. He wants to face more, if that makes sense. So he wants a USA, Iran face. They want them to challenge each other, basically. Iran is resilient with where it stands, and we could see leniency. And the USA said that they that they will postpone the enrichment for 5 years, but the missile case that they will not compromise. This is considered the most important one now. The missiles are very important for Iran now, especially after the latest war, and so this is why Iran cares about this case especially.
So Iran, sir, will only push. This will only push Tehran towards greater defiance.
Yes, Iran is prepared for this. Iran has been getting ready and preparing for this, and they expect it to be soon. Actually, they expect it to be in the past month, and now they expect it to be within the upcoming 3 months. And so, in the current year, 2025, there haven't been any wars or battles between Iran and USA. But if they have challenges or disputes between Israel and USA, then I can say that then we can reach an actual diplomatic solution. But at the same time, the diplomacy isn't gone forever. They can revive it, and they can see that there is a real diplomatic solution that they can refer to and they can use. As they said, Tehran said that offered to me the USA, but they refused.
Given the loss of key commanders and nuclear scientists, what steps can Iran take to rebuild its military and technological resilience without provoking another direct conflict?
They can take many steps, like diplomatic steps, so that through its allies. Its allies isn't just Russia and China, the traditional ones. We have new allies: Saudi Arabia, Egypt, UAE, even Qatar and Turkey. So they can take diplomatic steps, and they could really reach something. But apart from this, Iran will be prepared to face. And let me make something clear here. Iran doesn't want to be surprised with a new war. This they learned from the last war, and so they want to be prepared for anything to come.
Ibrahim Shir, Iranian affairs expert, thank you so much for your insights. Iran's cooperation with the IAEA now hangs in the balance, with Tehran citing the reimposition of UN sanctions by European powers as grounds for effectively suspending nuclear oversight, casting doubt over the viability of recent agreements and the agency's continued access to key facilities. Iran's top security body said recently that moves by Britain, France and Germany to reimpose UN sanctions will effectively suspend its cooperation with the UN nuclear watchdog. Despite the foreign ministries' efforts and proposed plans to resolve the issue, the actions of the European countries will halt cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency, the Supreme National Security Council said in a televised statement. Earlier this month, Iran and the IAEA had agreed in Cairo to resume inspections of Iranian nuclear sites. These were suspended after Israel and the United States attacked Iran's nuclear facilities in June. Decades of distrust escalated sharply in 2024-2025, with Israeli strikes and U.S. military actions deepening conflicts. Efforts at diplomacy flickered hesitantly amidst missile exchanges and war. Mediated talks resumed nuclear inspections recently, but trust remains fragile. One wrong move could ignite devastating regional war, keeping tensions on the edge.
U.S.-Iran relations have long been a fragile balance of diplomacy, deterrence, and distrust. This uneasy dynamic affects decades of coups, nuclear tensions, and sanctions. Under the Trump administration, relations sharply deteriorated following the U.S. withdrawal from the nuclear deal, the reimposition of sanctions, and escalating military confrontations, deepening hostility and destabilizing the region. That fragile balance was shattered on April 1st, 2024, when Israeli strikes destroyed Iran's consular section in Damascus, killing senior generals. Tehran viewed the attack not only as military aggression, but also as a violation of a long-standing diplomatic red line. Iran's leaders, then President Ibrahim Raisi and Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, swiftly condemned the strike, vowing it would not go unanswered. They accused Israel of direct aggression and the United States of tacit approval, raising the stakes towards confrontation. The decision came on April 13th to 14th, 2024, when Iran unleashed one of its largest coordinated assaults waves of drones, cruise missiles, and ballistic missiles aimed at Israeli military sites. The operation was carefully calibrated, designed to show resolve without tipping into all-out war. By late October, Israel retaliated with one of its broader cross-border campaigns in years, striking 20 sites across Iran, Iraq, and Syria. Targets included missile factories, UAV facilities, and air defenses. Throughout the escalation, Washington walked a fine line. Publicly, It denied involvement in Israeli operations, but repeatedly emphasized its red lines on Iran's nuclear program and broader regional stability. Amid the open rhetoric and strikes, diplomacy quietly flickered. A man stepped in as mediator, creating space for indirect US-Iran contacts and keeping the possibility of dialogue alive. Only in September, after meeting in Cairo, did Iran and the IAEA agree to resume nuclear inspections at all facilities, including those damaged in June. It was hailed as a modest breakthrough, though fragile in scope. And so, US-Iran relations once again sit on a knife-edge coat between cautious diplomacy and the shadow of war. Both sides professed interest in a deal, but trust remains brittle, the stakes immense, and a single misstep could unravel the fragile progress achieved. This timeline tells us a story of promises, strikes, and stalled dialogue. Beyond the headlines, it reminds us that one miscalculation could spark wider conflict. Yet, with inspectors back on the ground and mediators still pressing, the door to diplomacy remains open if leaders choose restraint over retribution.
Thank you so much, Mona. And we move on to our analysis. These developments, which are taking place in Iran. We're joined from Washington with Mark Toth, National Security and Foreign Policy Expert. A very warm welcome, sir, and it's a pleasure to have you with us on the program. Do the recent Iran-Russia nuclear cooperation agreements after the strategic balance, and how should U.S. policy adapt, sir?
Thank you for having me back on Qnews. I think we are in a precarious time. I think your setup to this discussion is exactly right. And look, these are not my personal views. I'm just simply conveying what the Trump administration's position is. But their red line is that Tehran will have no nuclear production capabilities, and that includes enrichment. I know a lot of people say, but what about Israel? But from the Trump administration standpoint, they don't see the two as the same. And so Tehran needs to understand that. Whether they will react to that, agree to that, that remains to be seen. That's up for them to decide. But those red lines still exist, and Trump's still adamant about it. Now, I will say, though, it was interesting in comments that he made with Benjamin Netanyahu the other day in the Oval Office that he could foresee Iran joining the Abraham Accords. So I think he is trying to give carrots there. I think he's trying to signal to Tehran that he wants to talk, that we're not yet at another point of the U.S. striking. But those red lines exist, and he's going to need to see more movement coming from Tehran.
Sir, to what degree can Washington reconcile domestic political constraints, congressional sanctions, mandates, public opinion, and the flexibility needed for negotiation?
Yeah, I think they can. Look, Trump has proven that he's his own man when it comes to foreign policy. And certainly in the U.S. Constitution, he has great leeway in conducting the foreign policy and military affairs of the country. Time after time, that's been proven in constitutional challenges, and we've seen that so far this year. Many people have been concerned that he's been too hesitant, for instance, in the war in Ukraine. Others were convinced that, he wasn't going far enough with respect to Iran and its nuclear program. But then out of the blue, he decided, obviously, to bomb. So, certainly he can overcome any congressional obstacles, any issues of sanctions, et cetera, to implement the foreign policy that he sees fit in Iran. Now, what that will shape at this point in the future, time will tell. Right now, I think he's still, in a way, if we're reading the tea leaves right, trying to hand Tehran a peace offering to say, hey, let's figure out a better way to this than conflict.
That was Mark Toth, National Security and Foreign Policy Expert. Thank you very much for joining us, sir. With pressure mounting, the current relationship between Iran and the IAEA hangs in the balance. Therefore, joins us from Vienna, Yusri Abushedi, former Chief Inspector of the IAEA. A very warm welcome, sir, and it's a pleasure to have you with us today on the show. Dr. Yusri, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi recently said that the return of sanctions has created a new legal challenge in international institutions, including the IAEA. How does the IAEA view these developments?
In reality, actually, there is no direct link between the sanctions and the IAEA. It is indirect link. But actually, there are agreement between IAEA and Iran. And recently, in 9 September, in Cairo, there is an agreement between both sides to go back to the original.
Exactly, sir. I don't want to interrupt you here, but I want your narrative on the Cairo, which was mediating this agreement or an agreement between Iran and the IAEA to resume cooperation, sir, and now re-implication of sanctions diminishes, of course, this agreement. What's your narrative, sir, on this?
That's what I'm trying to say, really, actually. I don't know why you interrupt me.
I'm very sorry, sir.
Okay, as I said, there were inspectors actually last week. And in fact, during the sanctions start activated already, they were there inspecting some, not all, but some of the nuclear sites in Iran. And in fact, including one site which was attacked already by Israel before. So till now, it looks like really the Cairo agreement is still in action, although there was, of course, a warning by Iran that it might be affected, this kind of cooperation. We are going to see this week, actually, when there are also another inspectors should come to Iran and inspect other facilities, whether Iran will be still committed to Cairo agreement, or there will be influence from the parliament and pressure from their people to stop cooperation once more. That we had to see. I have a feeling Iran will continue, but as before, in a limited fashion, not openly to all sites, particularly the damaged site, or where the West think they hide the 500 kilogram of highly enriched uranium.
Sir, Iran's top security body said Saturday that action by Britain, France and Germany to reimpose UN sanctions will effectively suspend its cooperation with the IAEA. How might this affect current inspections or monitoring activities inside Iran, sir?
As I said, it was already mentioned by Arakji, the foreign minister of Iran, after he signed the 9 September agreement, that there will be effect if the sanction is activated. And now we see already 3 days ago, it is already activated. Till now, we don't see any clear instruction to stop the inspection or to return back to the stop the cooperation with the IAEA. They didn't issue yet that. I think they are still discussing, and we shall see. As I said, probably in days, we shall know, because other inspection should be performed as of next week. So we see what will happen already.
That was Yusri Abu-Shadi, former Chief Inspector of the IAEA. Thank you very much, sir, for your insights and for your valuable informative knowledge. And of course, for your time. The Iran nuclear issue is critical. US and Israeli 2025 strikes damaged Iran's nuclear sites, but Iran kept enriching uranium and will hold IAEA cooperation, demanding security guarantees. European powers reinstated UN sanctions, increasing pressure. Tehran shows interest in talks under new terms, yet mistrust and strategic uncertainty persist, leaving the region fragile between diplomacy, deterrence, and conflict risk. And now we move on to my dear colleague Rihem Morsi with a look at the top stories for this hour.
Thank you so much, Rana. We're keeping an eye on the latest news as it happens, and now here are the top stories for this hour. We start off with the White House that has announced that the US President Donald Trump has signed an executive order declaring that any attack on Qatar or violation of its sovereignty will be considered a threat to the US national security. The order, officials said, underscores Washington's deep commitment to safeguarding Qatar's stability and reinforcing its strategic partnership with Doha. By formally linking Qatar's security to America's, the move is intended to deter aggression and demonstrate the U.S. readiness to defend its Gulf ally against external threats. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez has urged Israel not to endanger activists aboard the Sumud flotilla delivering aid to Gaza, stressing the mission arose because Israel blocks UNRWA and EU relief. He called on Israel to avoid force as the flotilla nears Gaza's coast, aiming to break the blockade with food and medicine. Separately, Sanchez accused Moscow of meddling in Moldova's elections, where President Maia Sandu's pro-EU party secured a narrow majority over the patriotic bloc.
Que no hubiera tenido lugar si el gobierno de Israel hubiera permitido la entrada de UNRWA y el reparto de esa ayuda humanitaria por parte de Naciones Unidas. En todo caso, creo que lo que es relevante para los miembros.
EU leaders have convened in Copenhagen ahead of a summit to address regional security, including proposals for a drone wall following recent airspace incursions that closed Danish airports. The meeting also debates using frozen Russian assets to fund a €150 billion loan for Ukraine. That comes as France, Germany, Sweden, Norway, the Netherlands, Britain, Finland and Ukraine are providing troops and anti-drone systems for summit security. While Denmark stopped short of directly blaming Moscow for the incursions, the Prime Minister of Denmark suggested Russia could be responsible. Moscow denied involvement. The Israeli Occupation Army announced the reoccupation of the Netzarim axis north of Gaza Strip. The army stated that forces from the 99th Brigade carried out concentrated ground operations to strengthen control over the Netzarim axis, noting that efforts are underway to expand operations in the sector. The White House announced that U.S. President Donald Trump has signed an executive order regarding Qatar's security. The White House stated that Trump signed an order considering any attack on Qatar or its sovereignty as a threat to U.S. security. Additionally, the White House added that Trump signed an executive order reinforcing the United States' commitment to Qatar's security.
A separate deal. It always seems so natural. I mean, all the media would say that this seemed to be like, why did this happen 25 years? Why didn't it happen a long time ago? And it was always amazing to me. Somebody would say, hey, we got to make a deal. We have to make a deal. But this deal just fell into place. The Prime Minister did a fantastic job. His representatives are total professionals, and they got along well. And
That's it for the top stories for this hour. Stay with us. In our next segment, we turn to Russia-Ukraine conflict, that changing landscape throughout the past years.